Jessica carried more than just extra weight on her body. She also carried the invisible burden of stares, comments, and judgments from others. At 32, with a degree in literature and a deep passion for books, she built her career as a teacher despite the obstacles her physical appearance seemed to impose. Since adolescence, when her body started taking on shapes different from those celebrated by society, she learned that the world reserved different treatment for people like her. On the streets, it wasn't uncommon to hear giggles or supposedly well-intentioned remarks about diets and exercise. In the workplace, despite being competent and dedicated, she noticed how important projects and opportunities for recognition were often directed toward thinner colleagues, as if her intellectual capacity were somehow tied to her silhouette. In social circles, she was constantly relegated to the role of the funny friend, the one everyone loved having around to liven up parties, but was rarely seen as someone desirable or worthy of romantic admiration. Over time, Jessica developed a shell, pretending not to care about the jokes, smiling when people called her the cute, chubby girl, as if it were a compliment. But when she was alone, the words she collected throughout the day echoed in her mind, creating emotional wounds far deeper than any physical issue her weight could cause. These invisible scars made her constantly question her worth as a professional, as a woman, and as a human being, trapping her in a cycle of self-doubt that seemed never-ending. Jessica's breaking point came during a school planning meeting about the annual field trip to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. As always, she had volunteered to coordinate the activity, something she had done competently for 3 consecutive years. The room was filled with teachers, coordinators, and a few parent representatives. When the principal confirmed that Jessica would once again be in charge, a man in an impeccable suit raised his hand. It was James, the father of a new student and a well-known businessman in the area. "With all due respect," he said, in a tone that carried no respect at all, "but is Ms. Jessica physically capable of keeping up with our children? The walk in the park is long, and we could be putting the students at risk if she can't maintain the pace or requires assistance." The silence that followed was deafening. Some eyes dropped to the floor, while others fixed on her, waiting for her reaction. The principal, visibly embarrassed, stammered something about Jessica's competence, but the damage was already done. For the rest of the meeting, Jessica maintained her professional demeanor, taking notes and contributing when necessary, as if those words hadn't pierced through every layer of self-confidence she had built. But when she got home, her defenses crumbled. She dropped her bag on the floor of her small apartment and collapsed onto the couch, where the tears finally came, mixed with anger and deep exhaustion. Through her sobs, her eyes landed on the bookshelf filled with the books she loved so much, stories about transformation, resilience, and rebirth. And that's when an unusual clarity emerged from the pain. Something had to change, and it wasn't necessarily her body. What needed to change was how she allowed herself to be treated, how she positioned herself in the world, and most importantly, how she saw herself. That night, between tears and a cup of tea, Jessica made the decision that would mark the beginning of her transformation. Jessica's first step on her journey of transformation was to schedule an appointment with a psychologist. After careful research, she found Dr. Elizabeth, a specialist in body image and self-esteem. In the first few sessions, Jessica could barely talk about her body without tears welling up. Gradually, with the therapist's patient guidance, she began to unearth deeply ingrained beliefs she had carried since childhood. She discovered that, for years, she had accepted as absolute truth the idea that fat people deserved less respect, less love, fewer opportunities. "It's as if I've been living in debt to the world for taking up more space," she confessed during an especially intense session. Dr. Elizabeth helped her identify how she had internalized social prejudice, turning it into self-deprecation. In a revealing exercise, Jessica was challenged to list her qualities without mentioning physical appearance. At first, she hesitated, but soon the words began to flow. Intelligent, compassionate, creative, persistent, loyal. "Do you see how none of these qualities depend on your size?" the therapist asked. Little by little, Jessica began to separate her identity from her body, understanding that one did not define the other. She adopted daily self-compassion practices, replacing negative self-talk with kinder affirmations. She created a journal where she wrote down every small victory and qualities she admired in herself. On her bathroom mirror, she placed a reminder that read, "My body is not my entire identity." This simple yet powerful phrase became her mantra in difficult moments. Progress wasn't linear. There were days of setbacks when old thoughts returned with full force, but Jessica learned to recognize them as unwelcome visitors, not permanent truths. After 6 months of consistent therapy, the internal shift was visible to those around her. It wasn't just a new attitude, but a different presence. The presence of someone who was beginning to recognize herself as worthy, regardless of her body's measurements. As Jessica advanced in her journey of self-discovery, she felt the need to channel her reflections and experiences beyond therapy sessions. One sleepless night, while rereading her favorite book, she noticed how the only fat character in the story was portrayed as comedic and one-dimensional. Suddenly it clicked. She could use her background in literature to critically analyze how fat bodies were represented in culture. The next morning, she created a simple blog called Free Body, Free Mind. Her first post, an analysis of body stereotypes in classic literature, was written with no great expectations of reach. To her surprise, the post was shared in teacher groups and quickly gained positive comments. "I had never thought about it this way," one reader wrote. "You put into words what I've felt for years," another commented. Encouraged by the response, Jessica began publishing regularly. She analyzed contemporary novels, popular movies, and even TV commercials, exploring how fat phobia manifested in both subtle and overt ways. She also shared personal experiences, like the time a doctor attributed her sore throat to her weight without even examining her throat. The blog grew organically, becoming not just a space for personal expression, but also an educational platform. Jessica started receiving messages from people in similar situations seeking guidance, from students working on academic projects on the topic, and even from teachers wanting to incorporate discussions on body diversity into their classrooms. When the blog reached its 6-month mark, it had already gathered more than 10,000 followers. Jessica created a special section called Inclusive Library, featuring recommendations of books that portrayed fat characters in a 3-dimensional and respectful way. She also organized virtual book clubs, where people from different places could discuss works through the lens of inclusion and representation. What had begun as a personal processing tool had transformed into an educational platform that touched lives and opened minds, giving Jessica a purpose that extended beyond her own experience. Jessica's inner transformation also motivated her to reevaluate her relationship with physical health. For years, she avoided medical appointments whenever possible, tired of having any symptom, whether a headache or a common cold, immediately attributed to her weight. The breaking point came when she sought help for her constant fatigue, and the general practitioner barely looked up from the chart before suggesting a restrictive diet. Without conducting any physical or laboratory exams, he concluded that her exhaustion was simply the result of her body being overloaded. Jessica left the office determined to find professionals who would treat her with dignity. Through online support groups she discovered via her blog, she found recommendations for doctors who practiced a holistic health approach, considering physical, mental, and social aspects without focusing exclusively on weight. With her new endocrinologist, Dr. Camilla, she had a revelatory experience. After carefully listening to her symptoms and family history, the doctor ordered comprehensive tests, which revealed a case of hypothyroidism, a condition affecting her metabolism and contributing to both weight gain and chronic fatigue. This could have been diagnosed years ago, the doctor commented, if someone had looked beyond the scale. The discovery evoked mixed emotions in Jessica. Relief at finally understanding part of her struggles, but also deep indignation over the years of medical negligence she had endured. With proper treatment, she noticed significant improvements in her energy levels and overall well-being, though changes in her weight were minimal, confirming that health and thinness were not synonymous. Motivated by this experience, Jessica created a new section on her blog titled Health is a Right, where she shared information on patient rights, tips for assertive communication with healthcare professionals, and a collaborative list of doctors and nutritionists with non-stigmatizing approaches. This initiative became one of the most accessed resources on her platform, helping hundreds of people seek dignified care and accurate diagnoses, regardless of their body size. Jessica's journey of self-discovery and personal empowerment began to spill over into her professional life in ways she had never imagined. During a class on bullying in children's and young adult literature, she noticed how intensely her teenage students engaged when she connected the content to issues of physical appearance and acceptance. During the break, 3 students approached her to share personal experiences of discrimination they had faced because of their bodies. That heartfelt conversation ignited an idea she had been incubating for months. Why not develop a structured educational project on body diversity and inclusion? Over the following weeks, Jessica dedicated her nights and weekends to researching methodologies, compiling materials, and designing activities that could be applied across different subjects and age groups. She named the project Bodies in Dialogue, Building Prejudice-Free Schools, and presented the initial draft to the school's academic coordinator. To her surprise, the same principal who had hesitated during the incident with the student's father now showed enthusiasm, recognizing the importance of the topic in today's school environment. Jessica was granted permission to implement the project as a pilot in her own classes, documenting results and refining the methodology. The impact was immediate. Students who were typically silent began participating actively in discussions. Instances of appearance-related bullying visibly decreased. Parents reported positive changes in conversations at home about body image and self-acceptance. After a semester of implementation, Jessica was invited to present the results at the regional conference on inclusive education. Her presentation, filled with concrete data and heartfelt testimonials, caught the special attention of a representative from the Ministry of Education attending the event. We've been looking for precisely this kind of initiative for our new national anti-bullying program, the representative commented, exchanging contact information with Jessica. 3 months later, the official invitation arrived, the Bodies in Dialogue project would be adapted as a model for a pilot program in schools across 5 Brazilian states, with Jessica as the lead consultant. The teacher, who had once been questioned about her physical ability, was now a national reference in inclusive education, transforming her pain into a legacy that would protect countless children and teenagers from experiencing the same struggles she had faced. As her professional life flourished, Jessica realized it was also time to reassess her personal relationships. For years, she had accepted friendships and connections that subtly diminished her. Friends who introduced her as, "She's chubby, but she's super nice." Colleagues who gave backhanded compliments like, "With that beautiful face, if you lost weight, you could be a model." Ex-boyfriends who claimed to love her despite her body. With her newfound awareness and inner strength, Jessica began setting clear boundaries. She had honest, sometimes painful conversations. Some people understood and adjusted their attitudes, showing genuine remorse. Others reacted defensively, accusing her of playing the victim or becoming too sensitive. Jessica learned to recognize that not all relationships were meant to evolve with her. Some needed to be left behind. At the same time, she strengthened bonds with those who had always fully respected her and cultivated new friendships through the communities she had found along her journey. At an educators' gathering where she presented her project, she met Thomas, a history teacher and human rights activist. What started as an engaging conversation about teaching methodologies evolved into coffee meetups after meetings, daily messages, and eventually a relationship. For the first time, Jessica experienced a romantic connection where her body was not treated as a flaw to be tolerated or an obstacle to be overcome. Thomas admired her intelligence, sense of humor, passion for teaching, and worldview. When he spoke about what attracted him to her, he mentioned her contagious smile, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about literature, and her ability to transform difficult experiences into learning. Jessica's body was simply a part of her, no more, no less important than any other aspect. "You make me feel like a whole person, not an exception to the rule," Jessica confessed one night, trying to explain how this experience was different from anything she had known before. With Thomas and her renewed circle of friends, Jessica finally understood what healthy relationships should be: spaces of mutual growth, complete respect, and genuine acceptance, free from the shadows of prejudice. As Jessica rebuilt her relationship with her body and identity, she felt drawn to an idea she had long pushed to the back of her mind: returning to swimming. In her teenage years, before shame and prejudice had driven her away from pools, swimming had been one of her greatest joys. Now, motivated by a genuine desire to reconnect with this passion, not by aesthetic or social pressure, Jessica enrolled in a gym with a heated pool. The first time she put on a swimsuit after so many years was a moment of extreme vulnerability. She looked at herself in the locker room mirror and took a deep breath, reminding herself of her mantra: "My body is not my entire identity." At first, she chose strategic hours, going to the pool during quieter periods to minimize curious glances. With waterproof headphones, she submerged herself not only in the water, but also in her favorite playlists, creating a personal sanctuary where she could move freely. The first few weeks were physically challenging. Her muscles protested, her endurance was limited. But the feeling of weightlessness in the water, the freedom of movement without joint impact, brought back a forgotten pleasure. Week after week, she noticed progress. She could swim longer, her technique improved, and most importantly, her anxiety about being in a public space in a swimsuit started to fade. Gradually, she began attending busier hours, a small personal revolution. One day, an instructor approached her and complimented her stroke, inviting her to join group classes. A few months earlier, such an invitation would have caused panic. Now, she accepted it with a hesitant smile. In group lessons, Jessica met people of all body types and skill levels, all simply focused on enjoying the moment. The most surprising change for Jessica was not the physical transformation, although she noticed increased energy, less back pain, and better sleep, but the impact on her mental health. Swimming had become her refuge, a sacred time for self-connection, where negative thoughts dissolved in the water. "It feels like every stroke washes away a bit of the shame I carried for so long," she shared with Dr. Elizabeth in a session. Swimming had become not just exercise, but active meditation, and a tangible proof that she deserved to take up space and experience joy regardless of her size. The growth of the blog, Free Body, Free Mind, and the recognition of its educational project began to propel Jessica beyond the circles she had initially imagined reaching. Everything changed when a nationally circulated women's magazine published an article about initiatives against prejudice, highlighting her work. The week after the issue was released, Jessica received an email that left her both excited and terrified. An invitation to appear on a morning talk show to discuss fat phobia in school environments. Her first instinct was to decline. "I'm not an expert, I'm just someone sharing experiences," she argued with Thomas. "That's exactly why your voice is important," he replied. "You speak from a real place." After days of anxiety and careful preparation, Jessica faced the cameras. She was surprised to realize that once the interview began, the words flowed naturally, as if she were in a classroom. The feedback was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of messages on her blog, invitations for other interviews, lectures, and even consulting opportunities for companies seeking to create more inclusive work environments. The teacher, who once hesitated to draw attention to herself, was now on a public platform, speaking about a topic she knew intimately. "It's like I've found my voice," she confessed to Dr. Elizabeth. "And the most amazing thing is that the more I speak, the more people feel encouraged to speak too." This realization inspired Jessica to take a step beyond individual activism. With the help of professionals she had met on her journey, psychologists, educators, lawyers, she founded the non-profit organization Space for All. The organization operated on two main fronts, offering free psychological support to people facing discrimination due to their bodies and developing awareness programs for companies and institutions. In less than a year, the non-profit established partnerships with 3 universities for research on the psychological impact of fat phobia and successfully convinced 2 major corporations to revise their internal policies, eliminating subtle discriminatory practices in their hiring processes and career plans. Jessica, who had once been silenced by shame, had become a powerful voice, creating spaces where other voices could also be heard. Her greatest personal challenge was learning to take a public stand without allowing exposure to consume her. She set clear boundaries, preserved her privacy, and learned to filter criticism, focusing on the positive impact of her work. 5 years after that fateful school meeting where she had been publicly humiliated, Jessica sat in a packed bookstore, watching the line forming for the signing of her first book. Beyond Weight, Stories of Resistance and Self-Love was not just an autobiographical account. It was a work that intertwined her personal experiences with academic research on fat phobia, testimonials from others, and practical tools for confronting prejudice. The idea for the book had emerged during a writing retreat that Thomas had encouraged her to attend. Initially hesitant, Jessica was surprised by how much material flowed once she allowed herself to write without filters. The writing process was both therapeutic and challenging. Reliving certain painful memories from a new perspective brought both healing and deep insights. When the manuscript was completed, 3 publishers showed interest, something she had never imagined possible. The book quickly gained recognition, being adopted in psychology, education, and even medical courses at various universities. Literary critics praised its accessible language and honest approach, highlighting how it filled an important gap in the literature on body image and self-esteem. As she signed copies and briefly conversed with each reader, Jessica reflected on her journey. Many people in line shared stories similar to hers. Others were professionals seeking tools to help patients and students. Some were mothers worried about their children's self-esteem in a world obsessed with unrealistic beauty standards. A middle-aged man approached with tears in his eyes, explaining that the book had helped him understand his teenage daughter's silent suffering and rebuild his relationship with her. Moments like that confirmed to Jessica that her pain had not been in vain. It had transformed into purpose and connection. Her personal and professional life had reached a balance that once seemed impossible. The educational project was being implemented in schools across the country. Space for All was growing, now with a dedicated team. Her relationship with Thomas had evolved into a marriage based on partnership and mutual respect, and her blog remained a safe haven for thousands of people. Jessica had not become immune to prejudice. She still faced episodes of discrimination, cruel online comments, and occasional self-doubt. The difference was that now she had tools to handle these situations, a supportive community, and an unshakable conviction of her worth. That night, as she closed the book signing event, a young reporter asked what message she would like to leave for those facing similar battles. Jessica smiled and replied, "Turn your pain into purpose. The world will try to convince you that you should be less, take up less space, dream less. Prove them wrong not just by surviving, but by thriving in your authenticity." Now tell me, when was the last time you reflected on your own unconscious biases related to weight? In what subtle ways might you have judged someone or yourself based solely on physical appearance? This is an opportunity for us to examine our thoughts, language, and actions. How can we contribute to creating a world where people like Jessica don't need to overcome anything because they were never put down in the first place? Did you like this story? Don't forget to leave a like to support this content that aims to raise awareness and create change. Subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring stories that challenge biases and expand our perspective on the world. And if you know someone who could benefit from this message, share it now. Together, we can build a society that celebrates all bodies and recognizes that human worth goes far beyond physical appearance.